and it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for July 15th through 21st, 2024. So I'm no longer on beach internet, so hopefully we'll not have any problems like we had the past couple of weeks. But yeah, for those that don't know who I am, again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium presently located in Maryland, where I'm from originally, but normally I'm in New York City. And, you know, we look at the astrology every week. You hear me say it, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%, because astrology is just a framework for time, for energy, and to help us understand our lives, and in particular our lives, but also the world around us. So as we were talking last week, we were in Cancer season. I actually alluded a little bit to this upcoming, well, it already happened at this point today, the conjunction between Mars and Uranus and Taurus. And Mars and Uranus, they come together every couple of years. But, you know, as I was saying this last week, you know, maybe you remember me saying that one of the things about Mars conjunct Uranus is that it's happening right when we're in this very interesting time, this 4-week period that began with a Cancer new moon on July 5th. So July 5th was a week and a half ago, if I'm doing my math right. So somebody says that I also am very hot in this room. It's very hot in the East Coast of the United States at the moment. But anyway, that July is a linchpin for the year. It just happens that July is about the middle of the year. Why? Because when you really want to look at the year ahead, which I do every year, I do the look ahead for the year, you look where are the eclipses. Well, in 2024, the eclipses, we had a lunar eclipse, I think it was May 25th, it was March 25th of this year. We had a solar eclipse on April 8th, was the very one that was visible in the United States, Canada, and parts of Mexico. We will have an eclipse on October 2nd. This will be in Libra. So I look at the eclipses and then I take note, well, where's the midpoint? So this is 3 months after, 3 months before. This took us a little bit into June as well. And I'm like, where's the new moon that sort of acts as the bridge between these two eclipses? Well, in this case, it's the new moon of July 5th, which we just had. And that tells me as an astrologer that for the next 4 weeks, we're in this very interesting period of time that ties together these two eclipses, or these two eclipse periods. As I said a few moments ago, we will have a solar eclipse on October 2nd. And you're like, October 2nd? Hold on, it's July. But we need to understand that's the thing about time and astrology. Astrology marks time, the milestones of time, the milestones of our lives, and when we can expect maybe life gets a little bit interesting. So we had as I said, the new moon, that was July 5th. And then I believe I said this last week, or I wrote about it in my newsletter, we're going to have the first quarter moon. The first quarter moon, the moon was in Libra. That's the 90-degree angle from the sun, and also the new moon that we had on July 5th. So that says to me as an astrologer that this week, last week, very interesting time. And then we were building up to today's conjunction between Mars and Uranus. As I said a few moments ago, this happens every 2 years. That's pretty run-of-the-mill in terms of how astrology works. We had a Mars-Uranus conjunction in early August of 2022. No, 2020. That's right, 2022. And then we actually had one, even though it's not quite exactly 2 years, it really depends when the Mars retrograde cycle is. We had one in January of 2001. So these three, Mars conjunct Uranus, is actually part of a set, because believe it or not, this is going to be the last time Mars is conjunct Uranus for another 80 years in the sign of Taurus, because by next year we're going to have, or even 2 years from now, when we have the next Mars-Uranus conjunction, I think it's going to be at 5 degrees of Gemini. So we're actually starting to move out of this larger framework of time ever since Uranus went to Taurus in May 2018 and March 2019. So The question is, well, how is this playing out in your own life? What are the stories? What's the intersection of events? These are events that are being activated by the eclipses of April, but even the eclipse of October. And here we are, like I said, right in the middle point. I probably said this last week. I'm going to say it again. Mars and Uranus are two very different class of planets. So one, we need to understand historically that up until 1780, the last planet that we could see in the sky, the last known visible planet, was Saturn. So if you read astrology texts, ancient astrology texts, even astrology texts going back 250 years ago, they didn't know about Uranus and Neptune and Pluto because Uranus was discovered in 1781 by telescope. Then we had Neptune in the 1840s, if I remember my astrology correctly, and then Pluto was like 1930 or 31. So these are new additions to astrology. They're in a different class than Mars. Mars is what's called a personal planet. It talks about what do we desire, our ability to stand on our own 2 feet, to be a leader, to move forward. But also, because we're human beings, we can sometimes get frustrated. We can get like angry. We can lash out. That's two sides of the same Mars, just depending on how we look at it. So we take this Mars and we merge it with Uranus. And Uranus is what's called an evolutionary planet because it was not known to the ancients. It has a much slower cycle. Uranus will spend 7 years in a sign. Mars will spend about 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, unless there's a retrograde. Two very different periods of time. So we need to just think about astrology as just different cycles of time that are playing off these threads. And when Mars reaches Uranus, we have an ability to evolve, to transform, to break free or break through how we use our Mars. Each and every one of you, because astrology isn't just your sun sign. I periodically remind you of that, so maybe you know it by now, but you are a sun sign, but you've got 11 other signs around you, and you've got all these other planets, not just the sun. You've got a moon sign, you've got a Mercury sign, you've got a Venus, Mars, etc., etc. When you start to get to Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, you will likely share the same sign as your cohorts, as your generation, because they move much more slowly. But that shows us where each generation is working to grow, evolve, and to transform an archetype of a certain sign. So let's go back to May 2018 and March of 2019. I know you've heard me say it time, and at this point we're like, what, 6 years, 5 years into the story. Those were the 2 months that Uranus went into Taurus. Uranus had not been in Taurus since the 1930s and 40s. Yes, that long ago. It has an 84-year cycle. And we began a story about growing and evolving and awakening and reinventing our relationship with the archetype of Taurus. And you may be thinking, Katie, I have nothing in Taurus. How is this relevant to me? But you are all 12 signs, because you exist in a world, and that world has many different permutations. And even if you have nothing in a sign in your personal astrology, that area governs. It could be a relationship sign, it could be a career sign, for example, and that area has seen possibly some sort of change and transformation, even if it's internal change and transformation since 2018 and 2019. So Mars, for some of you, is this restless push to break free of something, and if we thread it back, quite possibly we can see how it's been these sort of successive waves over the last 4, 5, and even 6 years. Mars in Taurus is not in a sign that typically, from a classical astrology perspective, that it likes to be in, because Mars is in a sign that's typically governed by Venus. Mars has to be a little bit more diplomatic, has to slow down a little bit, it has to enjoy the physical plane. But that said, Mars in Taurus does touch upon stability, security, money, income, value, and worth. That is a collective experience because we have a collective experience with the astrology, and then we have our own personal experience with the astrology based on our sun sign. So each and every one of you, you get out of bed in the morning. I sure hope so. You hopefully have a sense of desire about how you want to live your life. I know sometimes it's not that easy. That's when we can get a little bit down, even depressed. But Mars gets us out of bed in the morning, and it helps us to find our motivations, our desires. So each and every one of you listening or watching, you have your own relationship with that energy and that archetype. Hopefully you have a sense of Mars is a little bit more immediate, like it wants it now. You know, when we start to get other planets in the mix, we can use that Mars to look ahead and to start to orient ourselves towards a future goal, for example. So you all have your own relationship with Mars, and you all have your own relationship with Taurus. Taurus is the archetype of, you know, money, income, as I said a few moments ago, material stability and security. It is, if you can feel your feet at the moment, I hope that is the earth beneath your feet, even if you're multiple stories above. And so Taurus is a very tactile sign. It really talks about, again, the grounding, the earth beneath our feet, our ability to have the resources that we need as humans, food, shelter, some sort of money and exchange and currency, some sort of goods, for example. So all these things are very highlighted. And then we have Uranus. So Uranus can be a reinvention. It can be awakenings. It can be sudden. It can be unexpected. All we know is that we can't keep doing things. We can't keep, let's say, identifying our desires or maybe even existing our desires in the same way. We need to find our desires. We need to awaken our desires. We need to find our Mars, for example. This is the last time, I said this a few moments ago, the last time Mars will meet up with Uranus in Taurus for another 80 years, because Uranus is about to get out of, not about to, like in a year from now, literally July 2025, it will start to go into Gemini. So we're going into a new story. So again, to see, you know, how does this relate to your own life? What are the stories that you see? How do you see a sense of safety, stability being activated, security, money, income, value and worth, self-value, self-worth? Because that part of your life, whatever Taurus governs, very likely does not look the same way that it did 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I realize this is sort of pre-pandemic times. It's a little bit of a black hole, but like think back to your life, 2018, 2019. You've heard me say from time to time that, like, yeah, I was in my day job. And then I quit my day job in March of 2019 to do this full time. So yes, it's been 5 years, and that's how I've seen Uranus unfold in my own life. Then again, I'm a Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign that's opposite of Taurus, so this is very much playing off of my own personal astrology. So there's my personal relationship with the astrology, just like you will have your own personal relationship with the astrology. So yeah, how are you feeling? How are you feeling this energy, especially as we navigated last weekend, the first quarter moon? We're sort of seeing this intersection in our lives. Maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not so obvious, but the intersection is there. Make note, because we may see, let's say, a presaging or a preview of the eclipse to come on October 2nd. That is our next eclipse period. 3 months from now, we will, just as an aside, have a lunar eclipse in Pisces. This will be on September 17th. This will be our first eclipse in Pisces, part of a series that will take us into 2026. We're not quite there yet, but maybe Gemini season, so end of May into June, was also a preview of that new eclipse cycle that's going to start to come in later this year. So that's why there's just some really interesting astrology at the moment. It's Mars and Uranus plus eclipse energy. And, you know, something wants to break through, something wants to get out of our own way, something wants to shake us up, even if that's internal, an internal relationship with yourself. Because Uranus is also the planet of consciousness and awakenings. think about the world in, let's say, the middle of the 18th century, the mid 1700s. And then things started to change and things started to rapidly change. The discovery of Uranus actually mirrors a lot of the sort of shifts in dynamic in the world that we started to see at the end of the 18th century. And then a lot of the changes that we continue to see into the 19th century and even into the 20th century. So we're still, not me personally, but scientists are still discovering planets. But it's a lot to take in. I think astrology is, at this point, well versed in Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but Pluto, it's barely been 100 years since Pluto's been discovered. So anyway, a little bit of a tangent. So Mars plus Uranus, and then Mars will actually leave Taurus this week. It will go into Gemini on the 20th of July, and so Mars will spend about 6 weeks in the sign of Gemini until September 4th. If Mars again is action, motivation, and desire, it points away from Taurus, where it's been since June 9th, and it will now start to point towards a sign that is about information, ideas, movement, communication, education. So Mars in Gemini typically has a lot to say. Sometimes it can have opinions. Jupiter is also in Gemini, so we'll talk about that more next week. But we are starting to see some gear changes this week. The other big news this week is that we will have a Capricorn full moon. And yes, you are correct. We had a Capricorn full moon almost 4 weeks ago. And that Capricorn moon played off of the Gemini new moon of June 6th. And it's not typical that we have a full moon, back to back in the same sign. It's just like if there's one at the beginning of the sign, it's more likely that we'll have one at the very end of the sign. So what's Capricorn? Well, Capricorn is one of the 4 cardinal signs. The cardinal signs, they align with the 4 directions. These are the 4 pillars of life. We need these signs to really hold up our lives, whether it's Aries, the sign of individuality, being able to stand our own 2 feet, to lead. Cancer, which is Cancer season right now, home and family, roots, foundation, a sense of home, a sense of belonging, a sense of rootedness. Libra, the other cardinal sign, is about relationships and connections and socialization, and then Capricorn is the last cardinal sign. We need all of these, but Capricorn in particular helps us to find our place in the world. Imagine you are still the 12-year-old version of yourself, and you're like, that's crazy. But if you were still in the mentality of who you are at 12 years old, could you be doing the things that you are now doing? Could you be in a relationship? Could you be a parent? Could you have the maturity and responsibilities and duties? No, even if you were very mature for your age at 12, just for example. My point is that we need to grow and mature. We need to find our place in the world. We need to, for some people, that is career. That is a sense of the title that's after our name, what people see us as, what role do we play. For some people, it's not career per se, but a sense of, I really have a lot of responsibility and duty in my life. I take it seriously. So we need that energy to sort of keep pushing us to take that step up, to find our wisdom and our maturity. We don't always think about Capricorn and by extension Saturn, its ruling planet, as a sign of wisdom and maturity, but this is more the wisdom and maturity that has gained from time versus, let's say, the wisdom and maturity that's gained, let's say, Sagittarius, which is a sign of knowledge from education and travel and opening up our eyes to the world. So without Capricorn, we wouldn't have a sense of boundaries and limits. We wouldn't know how to honor our commitments, to really do the right thing, to have a sense of accountability. These are all things that Capricorn, just as an archetype and a sign, help us to discover and to integrate inside of us. So while we had a Capricorn full moon almost 4 weeks ago, this full moon, that was at, I think, 1 degree of Capricorn, This full moon, which will be, on the 21st, so Sunday, this will be at the end of the sign. The full moon at 29 degrees is the end of any zodiac sign. This just happens to be a full moon at the end of Capricorn. The last degree, 29 degrees of a sign, it has an energy of Saturn. It says, what have you learned? What have you done? What have you become? What have you made? There is this push to take things seriously, to sort of see the result of our actions and perhaps even our choices. Is also an opportunity for something to become real, to become tangible, and to become anchored, for example. So the full moon that we had 4 weeks ago, and this full moon to come on the 21st, they are connected. They are like bookending each other, and perhaps events from June are playing out into July as well. And now we are to see, what is the result? What is this becoming? How is this becoming real and tangible? And maybe you all know at this point, I do love the planet Saturn a lot. It features prominently in my work, and I understand that we need Saturn. We need time. We need healthy boundaries, healthy limits, a sense of responsibility, our responsibility to ourselves, responsibility to others, responsibility to our community, and even the world. And without that, almost like rings on the tree, we wouldn't have these periods of growth and maturity. And Saturn too has rings, as you know. So this full moon will put the spotlight on Saturn. It just so happens to be that Saturn, as of right now, is in the sign of Pisces. It's been in Pisces since March of 2023, so a little bit over a year. Saturn in total will spend 3 years in a zodiac sign. In contrast, Uranus spends 7 years. The sun spends a month, 30 days. So you can see that these are all different cycles of time. With Saturn in Pisces, there's a little bit of an interesting element to the astrology this week, because Pisces doesn't talk about our real intangible world. It actually talks about, on one level, the world within. You have your own inner world that nobody will ever experience. You can talk about it, you can share it, you can create from it, you can welcome people into it through symbology or stories, but nobody will ever be able to come into your inner world. It's yours. And so Pisces talks about the inner world, your relationship, your deeper relationship with yourself, your sense of meaning and purpose, and also how do you try to find that meaning and purpose in your life. On another level, Pisces is about what is beyond the physical plane, meaning not what we can touch and what's real, but what's spiritual, non-corporeal, for example. So there is this element of having to look within, but also having to look beyond this week. What commitments and what boundaries and sort of what responsibilities are we carrying this week, and how do they directly connect to something that is beyond this world? And you're like, well, how is that possible? Well, maybe you don't have to believe me, but you are both a physical being and you're a non-physical being, and your physical being is having a physical life, but simultaneously you're having a non-physical life. Maybe you can say, well, I'm having an internal life, I'm having psychology, my own psyche, but even beyond this world. So why am I here? What am I doing? What am I saying yes to? What am I saying no to? How am I really showing up for myself, for my life, for others? I know these are big existential questions that don't have answers right now, but Pisces is a big existential sign. So that's going to add another dynamic to this full moon, and one where we need to make sure that our physical life, our material life is in some sort of harmony with our internal life and even our spiritual life. So that is your look at the astrology of this week. We'll go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet. You hear me say that every week. And so Mars is really driving and dictating your experiences at the moment. And since June 9th, Mars has been in the sign of Taurus. So Taurus happens to be a money sign for you. It's both the money you make, the things that you need, the resources that you have available to you, your sense of property, whether that's literal or metaphoric, the things that you desire, stability and security as well. So it's for you to see Aries, where money and property and stability and security have really been a focus in their own way in your life over the last, 5 weeks at this point. So this is a big conjunction, and I talked about it last week because I really wanted to put it on your radar, but because you are Mars governed, Mars rules Aries, the conjunction to Uranus today was a big one. You haven't had a Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus since August of 2022 and January of 2021. How have you changed? How has your relationship with money and income changed? Material stability, self-worth, and value changed over the course of the last 4 or 5 years? It's a very restless energy. It's trying to get you out of your own way. Sometimes we play it safe. Uranus is not a play it safe planet. Uranus is trying to get you to grow and evolve by any means possible. So it's for you to see how this is relevant, not just in this week, but something that's been playing out over the last few years. Mars will go into Gemini. This will be later this week on July 20th. It will spend the next 5-6 weeks in the sign of Gemini. So for you, Gemini, it means that you are going to spend the rest of July, August, and the first couple of days of September very busy. This happens to be the same sign that from August of 2022 all the way to March of 2023, Mars was retrograde in. So it's just for you to go back and look, but it's very likely going to be a busy time. So maybe you've got trips planned, maybe you're just very restless and curious, maybe you've got something to say, maybe education's a focus, but get ready because things are going to start to move and change. Taurus. So we've been talking about this a long time at this point, so apologies for repeating myself, but since May of 2018 and March of 2019, your sign has had a visitor. That visitor is the planet the visitor is the planet Uranus. Uranus has been at this point in total in your sign for about 6 years, 6 years. This is the only time in your life that you will have Uranus in your sign, unless you are an infant and you're going to live another 80 years to see Uranus come back. It's probably not happening. So this is the time that your soul needed to do this work, to break free, to make changes in your life, to see things from a different perspective. Who were you 5-6 years ago? What was going on in your life? And what's going on in your life now? Who are you now? Mars has been in Taurus, and it's a different time scale since just this past June. So it's taken, about 5 weeks for Mars to meet up with a planet that has been there for the last 5-6 years. This conjunction really, it's like the next wave, even if it's obvious, or sometimes it's internal, that's trying to get something to change and transform, and maybe to get you out of your own way. Mars can make us a little bit hot-tempered, a little bit frustrated, or it can make us feel like we have all the energy in the world. Use it positively, give it a channel. For example, Mars will change. Mars will go into Gemini starting on the 20th of July, and so you're going to spend the rest of July and August really focusing on money, income, material stability, and security. That said, Venus is your planet. It's presently in Leo, so this is a time to really focus on home and family, doing the things you love, really getting inspired by life, awakening to the romance of life, maybe not traveling, maybe spending time at home, so it's for you to see. But of course, everybody is different, but this is a bit of a powerhouse week for you, Taurus, and it's for you to see how this is relevant to your own life. Gemini. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury, if I remember correctly, is in Leo. Sorry, it's just like been a lot of back and forth and travel over the last 6 weeks. So Mercury in Leo pulls the energy of your sign to a sign that really wants to express itself. It wants to speak, it wants to communicate, it wants to share its voice, it has a point of view, it's passionate, it's impassioned, it's inspired. So how are you feeling this, Gemini? Are things busy right now? Maybe you've got a lot of things to do. Maybe you've got trips and traveling and going on. Maybe Mercury has you focus on education. Maybe taking classes, maybe you are writing, maybe you are giving TED Talks. I don't know what's going on in your life, Gemini. So it's a little bit of a busy time. This is going to take you into, I think we said this last week, it's going to take you into, gosh, I really started my computer, so now I think it says 2013 on the astrology. It is not 2013. But it will go into Virgo on July 25th. So it's something that we'll talk about next week because we are gearing up for a Mercury retrograde in the next few weeks. So that said, the Mars-Uranus conjunction that everybody is talking about, it's not just me, it's happening in space that's actually very quiet for you. So you're Gemini or Gemini rising. If we count out 11 signs or 12 signs, we reach Taurus. Taurus is the sign that is before you. Taurus for you represents your internal world, your spirituality, your unconscious, your dreams, your illusions. It's, like I said, it's a very personal, very quiet space. Uranus has been in this space since 2018, 2019, so maybe you haven't quite seen what this is doing on a physical, tangible level, but it's been trying to open you up. It's been trying to get you to awaken in some way. So you might not see this, Gemini, in the way that some of the other signs are seeing it, but maybe meditate, maybe get quiet, maybe spend some time alone, listening to yourself, listening hopefully for your higher self, so that something, a spark, can try to open things up. Gemini, Cancer, so we are in the last week of your season. If your birthday is this week, happy birthday. So the moon, in addition to having a full moon this week, the moon's moving a little bit slowly because it's going from, Scorpio, which is a sign that really talks about how do you express yourself, your creativity, your passion, your joy, this intensity that I don't think people realize Cancer has. And then it's going to move all the way to Capricorn by the end of the week. And we're going to have a Capricorn full moon on Sunday, the 21st of July. So this is the second Capricorn full moon that we are having. It doesn't typically work out that way, but it just so happens that we've got two almost like bookends. So go back, what was happening in June when we had, I think it was like June 21st, when we had that Capricorn full moon. What's happening this week? Do you see any connections? Because it's possible that something that began or something that was going on is getting a sense of resolution this week. Capricorn is a relationship sign for you. It's not just romantic relationships. It's how you connect. It's how you socialize. It's how you interact with other people. And to have a full moon in this part of your chart might say that this is a busy time for people to come in and out of your life. As I said in the introduction, in the first part of my weekly video, this full moon, as well as the new moon that we had on July 5th, it activates the eclipses. It's in this sort of, interconnected period, this bridge between the eclipse of April 8th and the eclipse of October 2nd. Both those eclipses are big for you because they activate career, they activate your living situation, home and family, roots, foundation, and so you might be seeing some pivot points and transitions last week, this week, and even into the next couple of weeks. Look to the full moon later this week on the 21st to illuminate something that has been going on. With the energy of Capricorn, you may have to make a decision. You may have to step up into a role, take on a duty and responsibility. Whatever you are choosing, even if it's romantically or a relationship connection, Make sure that you are not betraying your values. Make sure you have a strong sense of your convictions, a strong sense of right and wrong, so that you can make the choice that is right for you. That said, the Mars and Uranus conjunction that everybody's talking about, it's not hitting bigger points like it is some of the other signs, but it is illuminating your relationship with the whole, your groups, your friendship, your social circle, and your community. And it's to look to see how this area has needed to shift over the last 5 years, because Uranus has been there since 2018 and 2019. If something comes up with a friend, it might be part of a bigger story, especially with the full moon in relationships, where you need to make sure you and a friend are really seeing eye to eye on something. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and so right now the sun is coming to the end of Capricorn season. So we've got one more week until I think it's the 23rd of July, and the sun goes into Leo, so it's your season. But before that can happen, the sun has to get into Cancer, where it has been the last 3 weeks, and this has been the natural time in your personal calendar for things to end. You've come to the end of your personal year. You've needed to look back and reflect, and to let go of the things that you don't want to bring with you into your next season. Rest. Maybe you need to rest right now. Maybe that's where the energy is happening. Maybe with the full moon that we'll have later this week on the 21st puts in the spotlight health and wellness. You need to sort of put things in order. You need to focus on your body, your health, your wellness. Maybe it's time to not just rest, maybe it's time to recuperate, but that all prepares you for the new beginning to come when the sun goes into Leo and it starts your season. That said, you do have, let's talk about the Mars-Uranus conjunction. I mentioned this last week. I'll keep talking about it. It's the same thing that everybody seems to be talking about on the astrology internet. Yes, Mars and Uranus came together today on July 15th, and this was building up all this weekend and even last week. Mars activated a story that has been there since 2018-2019, where it's about reinventing your relationship with the world outside of you, your sense of duties and responsibilities. And for many of you, it's about career. What is your role in the world? Are you this? Are you that? How are you showing up? Are you doing things because that is the expectation of you to do these things even though you're miserable? Or is it trying to now navigate a different role that is more in alignment with who you are? Everybody, every last Leo or Leo rising is going to have their own personal story, because we're all not the same people. Mars in this space since June 9th says that career, your public life, your public reputation has really been a big focal point. It's been where a lot of the action is happening at the moment. Maybe Mars to Uranus today sparked something. Maybe it's an awakening. Maybe it's a different point of view. Maybe it's a push to get out of your own way. Again, you're going to have to see how this is relevant to your own life. Mars will switch signs. It will switch signs and go into Gemini on the 20th of July. And so you spend the rest of July and August really focused on friends, community, society, social issues, social causes, and really looking towards the future. That said, Leo, we do have a full moon. That full moon is talking about your health, your wellness, how you take care of your body, a need to maybe get some appointments in, for example, or just to really get your day-to-day life in order and really anchored and grounded, for example. It is picking up on Saturn in the 8th, and so you are a sign that for the next couple of years will continue to have Saturn in the 8th sign. This is a bigger period of your life that happens every 30 years. Yes, 30 years, where sometimes there's a lot of soul searching, a need to do a lot of inner work around the psyche, to heal, to let go, also to look around themes around money and income, power, assets, finance, and wealth. And perhaps putting some things in order with this Capricorn full moon. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and it's right now it's in something called your 12th sign. So you're Virgo or you're Virgo rising, but if I count out 12, I will reach the sign of Leo. Leo is the sign that comes before Virgo. That is what's called your 12th sign, and when you get there, it could be the Mercury is there, or maybe just symbolically the sun is there. This is always the 4 weeks before your birthday season. It's time to wrap up. It's time to let go. It's time to go within, because you've come to the end of a personal cycle. Things may be a little bit liminal at the moment. You are, or you will have Mercury pop its head into Virgo on the 25th. So next week it will spend a little bit of time there, and then it will pop its head back into Leo in August. So you're sort of have one foot in something, and you have one foot in, let's say, an old life, an old cycle. It's not quite full steam ahead. Really start to pay attention to what are the themes that are happening, because you will be revisiting them in August, for example. That said, the Mars-Uranus conjunction that everybody seems to be talking about is happening in a space that might be a little bit hard to see, because it's in your 9th sign. The 9th sign isn't tangible, it's philosophical. It's the most tangible you can get about the 9th sign is travel to a foreign country. It's legal matters, it's legal judgments, it's beliefs, it's religion, it's philosophy, it's your convictions, it's your sense of personal direction, your moral compass, so to speak, your sense of right and wrong. So these are things that are very subjective. They're very particular to you and your own life. See where that compass was at, where that personal compass was in 2018, 2019 versus where is it right now. Maybe you see things differently, maybe you believe in different things, maybe your world is bigger, maybe you've traveled, maybe you really have focused on your education, and maybe for some of you even gone back to school. That's why it might be a little bit harder to see tangibly what this Mars-Uranus conjunction is for you. But it is there. It is really activating a story that has been with you the last 5-6 years. Something wants to awaken. Something, even if it's to have this big realization about yourself. And maybe even how you, and that's the thing, we're human beings. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, where sometimes we get stuck in a belief, stuck in our past. And so that plus Mercury in the 12th is this really big opportunity to just let something go. Because I love you, Virgo. My mother was a Virgo, but sometimes you can get so myopic and tunnel visioned about the details, especially the details of the past, that it's hard for things to move. And so maybe that changes, for example. That said, Capricorn full moon is putting the spotlight on a fellow earth sign. You are an earth sign, Virgo, and Capricorn is also an earth sign. So this talks about self, your identity. How do you express who you are, your talents and gifts and your abilities? And so do keep in mind that you did have a Capricorn full moon here back in June 21st of 2024. So these 4 weeks apart, these full moons, they really tie together, they bookend each other, and they have identity and self and where you belong all in the spotlight. Libra, so Venus is your planet, and right now Venus is in Leo. So it is both a social time, a time to spend with friends, to be in your community, to find your allies, but also to look towards the world. What's your role in the world? How do you think about the world? To get involved into larger issues, for example, or maybe even just to make your world larger. So Libra, I know we've been talking about this a little bit, but it's worth noting that this is a lot of action that's going on in your sign, whether you are a Libra sun or whether you're a Libra rising. So you will, in 3 months' time, you will have a solar eclipse in your sign on October 2nd. So October 2nd will be here in a flash, but we actually are getting a preview of that eclipse right now. So the July 5th new moon, plus the full moon that we will have at the end of this week on July 21st, plus everything in between is sort of bringing October, the events of the energy of the eclipse, into now. So this is a transition point, might be a particular transition point for your life. This is not going to be the case for every last Libra or Libra rising. Maybe that's where your planet Venus is really getting you to think about the future, your direction, where do you want to go. But that said, with the eclipse that we had 3 months before on April 8th, it's just a very dynamic time. And one of those dynamic periods of your life is also focusing on relationships. Maybe you're at a crossroads, maybe somebody is coming into your life, maybe somebody's coming out of your life, but this is all sort of a part of the new beginnings, especially if your birthday is on October 2nd, plus or minus a few days. The new beginnings that await not just the people having birthdays on an eclipse, but all the signs awaiting you as you go later this year. So we had that, plus the Mars-Uranus conjunction. It's not hitting points like it is for the other signs. This is all happening in a deeper internal and emotional place. Uranus has been trying to flip on the lights for the last 6 years in a space that typically we like to push away. Uranus is in your 8th. Again, it's been there since May 2018, March of 2019. And the 8th, for every sign of the zodiac, but in the case of you, is the space where we need to look at ourselves. We need to be tested by life. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be tested by life. But if we do not look at ourselves, if we don't question ourselves, and we are never tested by life, we don't grow. We need this space. So it's been possibly a time of rapid personal growth and transformation. Maybe that's not the case for every Libra rising, but that's certainly as an overarching theme over the last 4, 5, and 6 years. Take note of what is bubbling up from the psyche. Is it themes around stability and security, trust, power, control, intimacy, sexuality? Is it about relationships? Is it about you? Again, it's for you to see how this is relevant in your own life. The Capricorn full moon is part of a bigger story, and Capricorn is your sign of home and family. This might bring to a resolution something about your living situation, something about your family, or something that really is connected to the past. Scorpio. Scorpio, so Mars is your planet. So it's a little bit of a hot astrology day because your planet, which has been in Taurus since June 9th, finally reaches the planet Uranus. So this is what's called a conjunction. We got Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus, your relationship sign, since May 2018, March 2019. So that's a slower moving planet, kind of like a car on the highway that's going X amount of miles or kilometers an hour. And then Mars, which moves much more quickly because it's closer to us and the sun, finally catches up to Uranus. So it's like a faster moving car on the highway reaches a slower moving car. It's like a conjunction. But this happened last August of 2022 and also January of 2021 in the sign of Taurus. Before that, it was Aries. 2 years from now, it's going to be the sign of Gemini. These are different conversations for a different time. How have you changed? How have you needed to change? Who were you in 2018, 2019 versus who are you now? Scorpio loves to be in control. That's just part of the archetype. But with Uranus in the mix, Scorpio has had to sort of really renegotiate its relationship with power and control. Renegotiate its relationship with relationships. And for some Scorpios to really make a big and maybe even dramatic change. Because if Uranus is in your relationship sign, it's also opposing you. It's opposing, in the case of the Scorpio suns, it's opposing your sun. Uranus opposite the sun is what I call the coming out aspect. Something has wanted to come out. Even if Scorpio's like, no, I have to like kind of keep it within. Something has wanted to come out. So it's for you to see what is the story last week, this week, and how that is actually connected to a much bigger story. A story that's been with you the last 5, 6 years. Uranus has zero sentimentality about the past. All it knows is that you're stuck, if you are, and it's trying to get you unstuck. If you are still holding on to something that you don't need to hold on to anymore, here comes Uranus. Uranus is like, what are you doing, Scorpio? So that's a big deal transit, and it's to see how this ripples into later this week. The Capricorn full moon that we will have, well, actually, let me back up. Mars will leave Taurus, and it will go into Gemini on July 20th. So on Saturday, it will spend the next 5-6 weeks there. Just think back August 2022 to March of 2023, because that's where Mars was. Then it was a much longer period because there was a retrograde in 2022 into 2023, or is it vice versa? Anyway, so you'll have a change in the astrological weather next weekend. That said, Capricorn full moon, Capricorn does put in the spotlight your sign of voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. There may be news. You may receive news this week. You maybe hear something. You might hear something that connects to something about who you are and how you express who you are, creativity. Maybe this full moon is about finding your voice, finding your creative voice, for example, and even taking yourself and taking your talent seriously. Again, this is all after the Mars-Uranus conjunction that's just trying to break you free. So how do you break yourself free so that you can find your voice and make some, perhaps even serious decisions this week? Sagittarius. So Jupiter is your planet, and it's been in Gemini since May of this year. And you heard me say it all in the run-up over the past however many months. The second half of 2024, at least on paper, is meant to be different than the first half of 2024. Because your planet, Jupiter, has changed signs, and then now it's picking up a different conversation in the sky with other planets, making a square to Saturn. It's joined, it's going to be joined by eclipses later this year. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So there's a big focus on relationships at the moment. There's a focus on home and family. Maybe there is a move, a plan for a move, or family is just a bigger focus. Maybe you want to start a family. Maybe you're starting a relationship, but this is a time in your life where it's more about other people than necessarily what you want. It doesn't mean that your wants and needs are not important anymore, but we go through different periods of life where we have to negotiate the wants and needs of other people. That is where you're at, and that's what happens when one gets into a relationship. You now have to start to navigate the wants and needs of somebody else. So it could be a time of major milestones, especially as we get closer and closer to that Pisces full moon eclipse on September 17th. That said, the Mars-Uranus conjunction doesn't have necessarily the same oomph as it does with the other signs, but it's still powerful nonetheless, because it's activating your relationship with your body, your health and wellness, how you take care of your body, but also the different aspects of your day-to-day life. Think of what your day-to-day life looked like in 2018, 2019. What does your day-to-day life look like now? You know, if you're like me, I was in an office in a cubicle in 2018 in Manhattan, and now I'm not. And it's just different. I'm not saying one is better than the other. So that's just a personal example about how, you know, my life looks very different than it did 5-6 years ago. It is for you to find the story. For some it is health related, for some it's diet and fitness and nutrition related. Maybe you physically look different than you did back in 2018 and 2019. And this is just a continued wave of growing and evolving and changing your relationship with your day-to-day life, but also your physical body, health, and wellness. Then we have the Capricorn full moon. It is the second one that we are well, actually, let me back up. Mars will leave Taurus, and it'll go into Gemini on July 20th. So it's going to really heat up a part of your chart that talks about relationships. And Jupiter is there already, so you're going to have some company, and it'll be really interesting to see what is the vibe as you go into the rest of July and August. It might be very busy, very social, or maybe something about relationships is coming right up to the forefront, because that's what Mars does. Makes things very obvious and in our face sometimes. Now that the Capricorn full moon is putting the spotlight on money, income, material stability, and security. Maybe you need to put things in order. Maybe you're making an investment for the home. Maybe you're making purchases for the home. Maybe you are purchasing property, but there is something about home and family roots and foundation, money and income, and even value and worth that's being very highlighted by this full moon. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet. It's still in Pisces, and you will have a Capricorn full moon this week. So on July 21st, you are in the spotlight. It is happening at the very end of the sign. So if you are born end of Capricorn, these are my, my like my January 18th, 19th, and 20th, 21st. If I'm doing my astrology correctly, you're in the spotlight with this full moon. Every year you get a full moon in your sign. This just happens that you have two of them, but to have a full moon in your sign, it puts in the forefront the things that are very connected to being a Capricorn: duties, responsibilities, taking your talent seriously, stepping into a role, accountability. But the full moon also talks about new beginnings, and maybe new beginnings that really talk about having to look at your choices. Saturn is in your third. Third is the part of the chart that talks about choices, ideas, information, education, travel for some. And so maybe this is putting you in the spotlight because it relates to travel, education, writing, speaking, communication, and again, even choices. Is for you to see how this is relevant to you. That said, the Mars-Uranus conjunction, it is a big deal for your chart because in the sense that it activates, let's say, the version of who you were in 2018, 2019 as shaped by family, through the lens of family, through the past and memory, versus who are you now and how much of that lens is still there. You've had to make a lot of rapid changes to evolve and grow and transform who you are versus perhaps a version of who you thought you were 5, 6, and even 7 years ago. We're all different people, and that's the thing that's very subjective about this space, is because there's only one you in the universe, Capricorn. Even though you're really good at doing the things that we're all supposed to do and taking on a lot of duties and responsibilities and saying yes to things and trying to be the boss, but sometimes that gets in the way of you being the real you. So there's been this like real push for you to make some changes. Maybe this full moon is highlighting some of these changes. I will say not just Mars and Uranus, but the full moon plus the new moon that we had 2 weeks ago on July 5th, it's really amping up your life. It's putting the focus on home and family, perhaps a move, changing your household, changing your living situation. But it's also the bridge to the solar eclipse we're going to have on October 2nd, which is about your role in the world, your career, your public life versus your inner world and your home life that's happening right now. So it's a bit of a big transition point for you, Capricorn, and it's for you to see how this is playing out in your life. Aquarius, so Saturn is your planet. So we are now a year and a half down into a 3-year chapter where money, income, material stability, and security continues to be a major focus. I know you hear me say that every week. At this point, it's to really sit and reflect, like, how is this relevant to my life? Saturn will definitely be in your second. Your second sign is Pisces. You have Aquarius, Pisces, etc. So if it's not money and property or how you earn a living, maybe it's a little bit more thematic. Maybe it's about stability and security, feeling safe, feeling stable, feeling secure. Maybe it's about self-worth and value. These will come in different variations over in total 3 years, because Saturn doesn't really leave this space for good until February of 2026. Yes, February 2026. That said, this full moon puts, the full moon that we will have later this week on the 21st, puts your 12th sign in the spotlight. So if Pisces is your second sign, Capricorn is your 12th, because if I count out 12 from Aquarius, I hit Capricorn. The 12th for every sign, the zodiac represents an ending. It's the end of the chart, it's the end of the zodiac for that sign. And so it talks about a needing to let go, a needing to rest and recuperate, to recharge, and to integrate all the experiences that that sign has had over the previous cycle, and in many cases the previous 11 months. This full moon might talk about a need to let something go, a need to look at rest, recuperation. This is playing off of Cancer season. Cancer is about health and wellness, getting your checkups, going to the dentist, brushing your teeth, making sure your life has some healthy routine to at the moment, setting healthy boundaries, setting healthy limits. It's for you to see how this is relevant to your life. Then on the other side of things, the Mars and Uranus conjunction is a big deal because Mars is a big power player in your chart. It governs your career, it governs your duties and responsibilities in your public life. And so if we go back in time, we go to 2018, 2019, Uranus goes into your sign of home and family and starts to shake up the household, your living situation. It's either a literal statement or that's a metaphoric statement. Maybe it's like something about your internal roots and your relationship with your past and memories and parents that are changing and growing and evolving. But something is shaking the roots and foundation of your life. Again, it's for you to see how this is relevant in your chart because you've put some Mars into that mix. The conjunction was today, but it ripples out into this week. You might see something wants to change within, something wants to shift in your living situation. And maybe you've already started to see those shifts in your living situation since June 9th, which is when Mars got there. So it is a big deal for you, and Mars, or rather Uranus on some level, Uranus has zero sentimentality, but it's in a part of the chart that it's all about sentimentality. So how does this conjunction be this continued pushing away from the past, pushing away from the familiar, but in a way, not the past because it's the past, but because it's holding you back. It's getting in your own way, for example. But it's a big one, Aquarius. It's for you to see how that sense of roots and foundation in your own inner life and your home life is shifting at this time. Finally, Pisces. Pisces, so Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter has been in Gemini just since the end of May. So we are, goodness, 5-6 weeks since that's happened, maybe 7 weeks if I'm looking at the calendar. And so this is going to be in total a year of Jupiter and Gemini. So I said this to Sagittarius, and I'll say it to you, and I've been saying this. The second half of 2024 is very likely going to be very different thematically and sometimes very visibly than the first half of 2024. Jupiter has brought you into a space that hasn't been in for 11 years, almost 12 years. It's home, it's family, and its roots and its foundation. Maybe you feel like you want to spend more time at home. Maybe you want to get a home. Maybe you want to move. Maybe family is more of a focus at the moment. Maybe you just want to nest and put down roots and settle down a little bit. But now that Jupiter's in this space, it begins to play off of Saturn. Saturn continues to be in Pisces. It's been in Pisces since March of 2023. And so there's just a lot of weight and responsibility on you at the moment. And whatever changes happen in the household, they're symbolic. They're symbolic of a new phase, a new time in your life. Maybe the birth of a child. Maybe it's a symbolic move. Maybe you're taking on more responsibility with the family or even with older parents, for example. That said, the Capricorn full moon puts into the spotlight your friends, your community. Like, who are your friends? Like, where do you belong? And maybe you're being asked to take on more like a deeper role and responsibility in your community, for example. That said, the Mars and Uranus conjunction that everybody's talking about at the moment, myself included, it doesn't have the same oomph as it does with some of the other signs, but it is activating voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. See what is the story for you right now, what is unfolding at the moment that does talk about voice, speaking, communication, writing, learning, education, because this is where a lot of this energy is being focused at the moment. So how do you free your voice? How do you think differently? How does the role of education or even the role of communication look very different now as it did to, let's say, 5-6 years ago? Uranus has been in this space, and I know we talked about it, but this is whatever is going on right now is part of this bigger story to grow, evolve, and transform how you speak, how you listen, and how you communicate. So again, it's for you to see how this is relevant in your own life, but it continues to be a little bit of a heavier time for Pisces, where life is demanding a little bit more from you, including to step up into greater roles and duties and responsibilities. So that is your look at the astrology of July 15th through 21st, 2024. And again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I appreciate you all. I will see you all next week. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube. You can book a consultation with me, and you can also sign up for my newsletter. All the information's in the show notes, or it's on my website. Again, empoweringastrology.com. So thank you all, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.